me for saying that. Oh, hello, everyone, and welcome. Lots of people pouring in. Go ahead and drop in the chat where you're coming from, though. Where are you coming from tonight? I know we sure missed seeing you guys last week. We were, let's go ahead and make that one. We were at a conference in California, a few of us, and I know a lot of you were dealing with the hurricane, and our thoughts and prayers were with you guys. So I'm hoping that that we didn't have a lot of damage from that for those of you that are here in Florida. How'd everybody make it through the hurricane? I see lots of people coming in. If you're just now coming in, go ahead and just put in the chat where you're coming from. St. Pete, lots of St. Pete, Largo, a lot of people that were in that. Well, I just got muted, sorry about that. Looks like a lot of people coming in from a lot of areas that were in the path of that hurricane. So we're just wondering, how do y'all survive through that? Any damage to anyone's homes? Jen, I know I see you were in Fort Myers. Y'all doing okay down there? Can you hear me, guys? Yeah, okay. Well, I just want to go ahead and just give a few more minutes. We still have more people coming in. That's great. They're joining us. Thankfully, all good. I'm glad to hear that, Andrea. All right. Well, as we go ahead and get started tonight, I just want to thank y'all for joining us again. And I also wanted to thank Darlene for leading last week, and John and Dawn who shared. And I thank you all personally for the birthday wishes. That was really sweet. Yes, last Monday was my birthday. So we had a great trip in California, but we got stuck there a little longer than we had hoped. It's funny how tonight we're talking about mastering our thoughts and emotions. And I think there was a lot of that had to happen this past week with the storm and traveling and people evacuating and hurricane preparations and those kind of things. I've talked to a lot of clients who said, oh my goodness, it was a rough week. So anybody feel that way? Oh, Jen, it's so good to hear that. We were very lucky, just minimal damage, not the case for many in our community. Yes, we will continue to keep those people in our prayers as well, that's for sure. Well, last week, you all talked a little bit about creating optimal well-being and really about fulfillment. So tell me, did anybody have any big wins this week that they would like to share? Any wins that you would like to share? Anybody out there? I know working through that hurricane, is there anybody that had some wins that they had? I know I talked to one client who's on here who reached her goal weight this week. Don't know if she'd like to share, but I want to give a big shout out to her because she has reached her goal weight. I won't call her out unless she wants to talk, but I'm super proud of her. She has done an amazing job on program. If she'd like to come off, she can. I just want her to know I'm very proud of her. She has really had a great mindset shift and was able to really step through a lot and get to that other side. I'm super proud of her for that. Jen, I see your hand raised.
Sorry, it took me a minute to mute. So the resonating thing that has come through my mind this week is that while this is my, the first time on this journey, my weight loss journey has been a lifelong process. And in any emergency, urgent, life-threatening situation in the past, that's the first thing to go. And this week I clung to the simple plan of being able to every 3 hours, okay, even when we didn't have power, I wrote down and like had something else, set when we didn't have our cellular or whatever. I made sure that I knew when I needed to eat and what I could eat. Like we still don't have water. So, and for a while we didn't have power, but we had tons of bars. We had tons of bottled water so I could make my shakes. We didn't have anything to heat for a little while, but it was like, I can stick to this and I have to feed my family and I can do that. Previously, that would have been an excuse to throw it out the window. Like, I'm done. I can't handle this right now. But it was such a different feeling. It's so easy to be able, not easy, it's simple. It's simple structure to be able to follow, whereas previously I would not have held on to it. So I'm very thankful for that, because that was the constant, that was something I could control in a very uncontrolled environment.
I love that. Very good. How did that make you feel, to feel like you had that control?
I don't know that I really felt control. I say that now, but I had a choice and I could make that choice knowing what it meant for me. There were other things that came up this week too, that I recognized the day after the storm that I was really pinging all over the place in response to what was going on and what I expected, what I thought other people expected of me. And I realized that come that evening, there was just so much stimulation. I needed like 10 minutes to myself. And I don't do that very often, but I needed that. Like, I needed to kind of retreat, refocus, and then I could like address others' needs as well as my own. There was just too much going on. And previously I would have just worn myself out. And then that would have led to lots of other poor choices. So it gave me things that I've learned from this program, that structure gave me other things to be able to hold on to through this whole thing. So it's a really wonderful thing. I missed my community, but my neighbors became that community, right? We've all kind of pulled together. So I missed you guys last week, but I had others to lean on. So it's a nice thing.
Oh, wow. I heard so many great nuggets in there. And this is such a great share that's going to take us right into what we're talking about tonight when it talks about mastering our thoughts and emotions. One of the key things you said there was you recognized your emotions later on that night. And then you took the time to actually deal with that and feel those emotions. But how empowered you were to take the tools that you've already used throughout this book and throughout the life book and throughout this program with healthy eating and mindfulness, and be able to apply them. And I applaud you for that. That's huge, because that's what we really want in the end of this program. It's not just about the number on that scale. It's not just about losing the weight. It's learning about how to have that optimal health with that healthy body and that healthy mind. So I applaud you for that. And thank you so, so much for sharing, because that is a great segue into what we're talking about tonight. So why don't we go ahead? I'm going to share my screen and we will go right into Dr. A's Habits of Health, element 23. Here. All right. Mastering your thoughts and your emotions. Our agenda for tonight, mastering your thoughts and emotions. First of all, we're going to talk a lot about mindset. We want to increase awareness of how emotional management can help create optimal health and well-being. We've talked a lot about healthy body. We've talked about healthy sleep. We've talked about healthy movement and exercise and energy, emotion. But tonight we really want to talk about that emotional management. Skillset tonight, we're going to learn some strategies to maintain internal stability despite what the world throws at you. I love that Jen's already got some of those that the world threw a hurricane at them. They've had no power. They've had no electricity. And yet she was able to channel those emotions and rely on the structure that she's created to help her get through it. And so tonight we're gonna really look at some strategies to help us with that. And then our action is we're going to practice the steps to processing those emotions. Moving on, Dr. Anderson had this quote: think about whether you spend as much time in the mental gym as you do in the physical gym. And, when we stop and think about it, by the time we get out of college or high school or college, we get so focused on our family, we get focused on our education, and, maybe graduating from college, we get focused on our careers. A lot of times we don't spend a lot of time on our mental health and actually processing through emotions. Dr. Anderson from the stage, about my first convention when I was coaching. I've been coaching for about 5 years. And actually, I didn't even introduce myself. I'm sorry. I'm Kelly Carter, but I think most of you on here know me. And he said from the stage the first year of that I attended convention, he said, obesity is not the number one problem in America. The number one problem in America is actually emotional mismanagement. And I thought to myself, oh my word, that is so true, because our emotions affect so much of everything that we do. So right now we're going to jump into a review from element 4 first. And so let's look at this. In element 4, we talked a lot about above the line and below the line. And when you're above the line, you're open-minded, you're curious, you have a burning desire to grow. You ask yourself questions like, what can I learn from this? How does this apply to me? You start to begin to shift that mindset into those more powerful statements that are going to help you grow. Once you're in that open, curious growth mindset above the line, you usually are ready to move from wanting to change to being willing to change. When we're below the line, oftentimes we're closed-minded, we're defensive, we have a desperate need to be right. We sometimes come up with the questions or statements such as, I'm trying real hard, but, or I'm right, they're wrong, or it's no use. I just don't think I can do this, or it's not my fault. And when you find yourself here below the line, it's really important to use some of the tools that we have been learning to become more open and less protective of where you are in your current situation. So when you're at that, I want you to think about being open and closed-minded. It's not really one's right and one's wrong, because throughout the day and throughout our life, we're shifting a lot between open and closed mindset. So I want you to ask yourself right now, how do you feel? Are you open and curious, or do you feel sometimes like you're closed and defensive? It takes moving into the present state and knowing where you are in your desire to grow versus being right. So that's one of the things we really want to learn, is that it's not always about being right, but it's about being open and willing to grow. In a closed and defensive below the line state, in element 4, we talk a lot about stop, challenge, and choose. And stop, challenge, and choose is that helpful tool that helps us learn how to respond to our situations rather than react to them. When you stop yourself, you're asking yourself the question, is this going to help me reach my goals? And it doesn't always have to be about program. It can be about anything in your life. But is this going to help me reach that next level? And then making that conscious challenge to yourself, and then making that conscious decision to choose whichever, whether you're going to support your goals at the time or whether you're going to choose maybe a different emotion. And let's see if we can get to go to the next slide. Next, we're going to look at, and this is also in element 4, how important is it to develop your mind and grow beyond? So in element 4, Dr. Anderson talks about the 3 brains. So looking at the 3 brains, in the very bottom, you'll see the stimulus. And the stimulus, or what we call the lower level of our brain, the lizard brain, if you will, reactions are automatic. Things such as like your breathing. You're not taught to breathe, your body just does it. Your heartbeat. We don't teach our heart to beat, it just does it. A loud noise. Say you're standing somewhere and a loud noise is made beside you. That jump is that automatic response. And that all happens in the first part, in the base of our brainstem that really developed first. When that stimulus moves into the Labrador brain, think about a puppy, if you will, just like it says a Labrador. And we know, for those of you that have puppies, and I have one who's sitting here snoring at my feet if you hear her, Labrador or a puppy usually wants to be loved. They want attention. It's an emotional response that they have. When a stimulus reaches our Labrador brain, usually that triggers a response that is an emotional response. For instance, say the love of food or the love of family. When that response happens, it usually connects you to an emotion. So for instance, you're at grandma's house and she's made a pie, but you're on program. But your emotional response tells you, yeah, but grandma made this pie and I don't want her to feel bad by telling her I don't want to eat this pie, because you love her and you want to just support her and encourage her. And so instead of jumping up to that higher level thinking, the human thinking, which we're going to talk about next, you go ahead and eat the pie. So when stimulus comes and goes out of the Labrador brain, we tend to make decisions that don't really support our higher wants, our higher desires. So what we are looking to grow in is moving that stimulus all the way up to our human thinking. Human thinking requires discipline and it requires willpower. And that comes into play in the prefrontal cortex of our brain. This is where we really stop and use that discipline and willpower to ask ourselves where we decide what our higher wants are. What is it we really want? What are our goals? What are the things that we truly, truly desire? Do we want to have more energy so that we can play with our children or our grandchildren? Do we want to live longer? Maybe we're dealing with some health conditions and we just want to live longer. So we're setting high goals for ourselves and our health so that we can do that. When stimulus comes and we actually make it all the way up to our human brain, this is where we make the best decisions to support our higher wants and our higher desires. And so that is really the goal here. So let me ask you this. Would you like some real tools to help you tap into that human brain consistently and be able to really move through stimulus all the way to actually choosing something that an outcome that will support your goals and support your thinking? Well, we are going to talk about that a little more tonight. Whoa, that's what we want to do. Hang on. Get off that. There we go. I'm not going to the next screen. Here we go. Okay, so the question I have for you right now is I want you to think about, what do I do when I'm emotional? So stop and think about that for just a moment. What is it that you do when you're emotional? What are your go-tos? We have so many ways of distracting ourselves from being with and expressing our authentic emotions and thoughts. So when we don't want to feel our emotions, when we don't want to feel them coming, sometimes we tend to what we call buffer those emotions. And if you look at this list, you'll see that there's quite a list. This isn't a comprehensive list, but it's actually a pretty good one. So as we begin to buffer our emotions, usually maybe we go to eating when we get emotional. I know I've talked to so many people, including myself. There are times when just emotional eating happens. Sleeping, drinking, controlling. Maybe you become a very controlling person. Exercising. Maybe you go right to cleaning. I know I've done that before. I need to just do something different and I just want to clean. Gossiping, shopping, watching TV, swiping. You know, when you look at this list, the one thing I want you to really look at in this list is that not all of these are bad things. You know, I mean, it's just a form of suppressing and pushing down our emotions. And this is when we are actually drifting below the line, though, is when we don't want to deal with those emotions. And so we buffer and we choose something like one of these to kind of move away from processing and dealing with those emotions. Some of these can be destructive to our health, such as eating. If you're an emotional eater, that can be very destructive to your health. But some of them are not. I mean, exercising, cleaning, you know, those aren't necessarily destructive. But the part that creates that being below the line is the fact that we aren't dealing with those emotions and processing through them. So instead of thinking that buffering is bad, I really want you to begin to just become aware of it. When you feel those emotions coming, stop. Just like we do in Stop, Challenge, and Choose, and realize, okay, am I buffering? Am I going to the food? Am I exercising uncontrollably because I just can't, I don't want to deal with these emotions. And you can do anything on this list. If you look at this list, you can do any of these things from above or below the line, just about. So remember that. I mean, any of these. You can choose to eat and stay on program and be above the line. But the point is we really need to learn, okay, how do we process through these emotions? So our first step, and tonight we're going to go through 5 steps of actually processing our emotions. So moving on, the very first step is to start becoming aware of the different emotions that you are feeling and simply sense whether they are directly supportive of your values, are they positive, or difficult and unsupportive, are they negative? So tonight, I want you just to stop for a minute and maybe you've been through something this past week. Maybe you had a situation arise where, you had felt some deep emotion. I know Jen sure did because she just went through this hurricane. I'm sure she felt a lot of these things. So let's look at this list. Have you felt anger? Are you annoyed or frustrated or mad, furious? Did you feel sadness? Are you down? Do you ever find yourself discouraged? Maybe you've experienced a death and you're feeling grief or a loss. What about fear?
Sweetheart, that was Sunday morning's.
Sorry about that. Somebody unmuted. What about fear? Are you hesitant? Are you worried? Are you panicked? Name that fear. Name that sadness. Name that anger. Because naming it is going to be the first step in processing through those emotions. Next, I want you to locate it. Where do you feel it in your body? Notice on this chart that we actually can feel our emotions, and certain emotions tend to reside in centralized locations. So this chart was pretty interesting to me because I know that, oh my goodness, hang on, let's go back. I know that for me, sometimes I feel it a lot and I'll feel it like in my back, I'll feel it in my shoulders. And it's funny because when I looked at this chart, I thought, it's funny sometimes when you're scared or you're fearful, I know that whole saying, butterflies in your stomach. I know sometimes, I get that before you get on a call to present or share, sometimes you get those butterflies in your stomach and it's like, that's from right there in your gut. So locate that and process through that. Next, we're going to move to describing it. Really ask yourself, what does it feel like? Is it clenching? Is it pinching? Is it tightening? Maybe it's pounding or pressing or expanding or nodding. But as you're processing through these feelings, you've named it, you've located it, and you describe it. What does it feel like? Then, probably one of the most important parts is shifting it. This is a time when we want to breathe with it. We want to acknowledge it. Take those deep but natural breaths. Engage and notice your entire body. When you're breathing deep in through your nose and out through your mouth, acknowledge that feeling and let those thoughts pass without really fighting them. Allow it just to be there. We're not trying to get rid of it. We're just allowing it to be there and process through it. We don't need to buffer these thoughts. Just allow those emotions to be there and sit with them for a little while. It's funny, I heard somebody say emotions is emotions, energy in motion. So allow yourself to feel it, to accept it, and then allow it to move through us. Next, we want to learn from it. When we learn from it, this is our last step. Sadness. What wants to be let go of or mourned? Anger. What wants to be stopped, changed, or ended? Fear. What wants to be known? Sometimes we just need to learn from it. There's so much growth and freedom found when we learn to process our emotions instead of buffering them or covering them up or pushing them down deep. And so this week, as you're really thinking about your emotions and how they affect you, I want you to think through these 5 steps. This quote by Viktor Frankl, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. I'll read that one more time because that really kind of spoke to me. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So what action are you going to take as a result of this element? I want you to really think and allow your emotions and your stimuli to actually process all the way up through that human brain, and use those emotions and ask yourself, is this going to help me reach my greatest desire, my greatest end point that you're really looking for, your goals and your dreams and your desires? And then when those emotions come into play, talk to your coach about them. Talk about those 5 steps that you're going to take to move through those and process those emotions so that your goals can be accomplished, and that you, no matter what situation you're in, can use the tools that you are learning to be able to come out on top and to be able to feel those emotions, but then to be able to step into everything that God's called you for. So I'm going to go ahead and stop screen share. And I just want to ask you, is there anybody that, while we were talking through this, has something that kind of came to mind and you think, oh my goodness, Jen did a great job earlier of kind of kicking this off with some of the things she's been through. But is there anybody out there that says, wow, I've done this, or maybe I'd like to do it more, or I feel like I get to a certain step and I have trouble going to the next step. Is there anybody that would like to share it all tonight? You can just raise your hand or come off mute. Cheryl?
Okay, so well, first of all, I have to laugh at John Jackson's comment about shopping. Really? Yes, John. Some people actually run their credit cards like really bad and create debt through stress shopping. Not me, however. But I will say that I do have a tendency to, when I'm angry or worked up about something, to clean. And the good news on the other side of that is the coach is not very clean right now. So I haven't been angry much lately. So that's good, right? But the house is dirty.
Love it. Love it. I didn't see that comment about shopping, but yes, that's definitely a buffering. I know I can go quickly to Amazon, and when I'm mad, my husband's shaking his head. Yes. Well, thank you, Cheryl, for sharing that. Anyone else like to share before we end tonight? Any questions? Yes, Noelle.
I just wanted to put a word of encouragement out there, because the more you practice it and you start to apply these steps, you can get better and better at them. And you won't be great at first. And it may be 3 years later, you're like, where did that habit come back from? Like, why am I doing that again? But just to encourage you that, you will start to raise that emotional intelligence level and catch yourself quicker, as long as you're applying the steps. And, it may be that you still give in on occasion to that anger or that treat or, whatever the situation is, but you can also see where you can get right back on track a lot faster. Instead of letting it go 3 days or 3 weeks or whatever, it may just be till that very next choice. So just to give you guys some encouragement that it does come with time. So like I'm 4.5 years down the journey. And although I'm not perfect at all of this by any means, I can see progress from when I first went back, when the life books first came out about, 2.5 years ago, to see what I wrote then versus how I react now even is just such a great tool that you can just see where you're coming along in your habits and in your maturity, in your emotions and type of things. So don't give up, keep going and keep pushing at it. And you're going to get to that other side. There is freedom over there. So it doesn't mean you'll be perfect, like I said, but you know, you do get the opportunity to get better and better.
Love that, Noelle. Yes, thank you so much for sharing that, because it's not a perfect journey, that's for sure. Sarah?
One thing that helps me is practicing that I am a participant in the audience of my own life. So I like observing, like my life is on a movie screen and I get to observe the emotion rather than be in the emotion and be the emotion and be the thought. Like I just take a step back and kind of observe it, which I know is like probably a couple steps ahead of where the book is heading, but just a second. But that's just something that has helped me and everything. This is Joy. This is my youngest.
No, well, hello there. No, you're exactly right. That makes me think of our one of our habits of transformational leadership with Optavia is we lead from the future, react in the now. So I love that you looking ahead at where you want to be, and just like I like how you said, a participant and observe it. That you're actually watching where you want to be, and then you're participating in that now. And that's a lot of what that was. We lead from the future, react to the now. Where is it that you want to be, and start acting that way now? Love that. Very nice. Anyone else like to share? We might have time for one more. One more. Well, okay then. So lead from the future, act in the now. Great stuff. Yes, Don Jackson. And I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Be sure to connect with your coach. That's what we're there for. We love to celebrate you and share with you. And we just hope to see you again next Monday, and hope you all have a wonderful week. Good night, everybody.